The war room smelled of old leather and older decisions. 3 years of conflict had etched themselves into every surface. Maps curled at the edges, their borders stained with coffee rings and the occasional splash of whiskey. Red pins marked enemy positions. Blue marked bodies that would never come home. Colonel Isadora Greystone stood at the head of the table, fingers pressed against the northern pass like she could hold the territory through sheer will. Her hair, more silver than brown now, was pulled back in the same tight bun she'd worn since her academy days. 42 years old, 20 of them spent in uniform. The last 5 spent alone. The council chamber buzzed with the particular anxiety of men who'd run out of options. 12 voices, all of them louder than necessary, all of them afraid to say what they were thinking. That Samir was finished. That the wolves had won. That 3 years of blood and treasure had bought them nothing but a slower death. Councilman Petrus cleared his throat. The sound cut through the noise like a blade through silk. "We should surrender," he said. His voice carried the weight of a man stating the obvious. "While we still have something to bargain with." Isadora did not look up from her maps. "The northern pass holds," she said, each word measured, deliberate. "We fortify the ridgeline, rotate fresh troops through the valleys, and we can maintain defensive positions for 6 months. Maybe 8 if winter comes early." 6 months, Petrus repeated. The skepticism dripped from every syllable. "And then what?" "We've lost 12,000 men. The wolves have lost 3. You're not proposing strategy, Colonel. You're proposing arithmetic that doesn't add up." Around the table, heads nodded. The relief of agreement, even agreement to quit, was palpable. Isadora's jaw tightened. A tell she'd never quite mastered. Her husband used to tease her about it, used to say she'd never make a good poker player. But her husband had been dead 5 years now, buried in a field she'd never visited because visiting meant accepting, and accepting meant breaking, and breaking was a luxury she could not afford. "Then what do you suggest, Councilman?" She asked the question without inflection. A general receiving intelligence, nothing more. The door opened before Petrus could answer. Marcus Greystone entered without knocking. He never knocked. Field commanders who'd spent 6 months eating rations in trenches did not knock. He was 3 years older than Isadora. Taller by half a foot. The same gray eyes, the same stubborn set to the shoulders. Their father's legacy, carved into bone and sinew. "Ironhold sent terms," Marcus said. He carried a leather dispatch case, worn smooth by constant handling. "They're offering a truce." The room exhaled as one. "What terms?" Isadora kept her voice level, professional, as though her brother had just reported the weather. Marcus opened the case, extracted a single sheet of parchment. The paper was thick, expensive. Wolf work. They did everything with a particular kind of efficiency that bordered on arrogance. "Ceasefire effective immediately," he read. "Prisoner exchange within 30 days. Establishment of a demilitarized zone along current lines. And they want you." Silence filled the room like water rising. "Clarify," Isadora said. Marcus met her eyes, no apology there. No hesitation, just the facts, delivered clean. "They want our chief military strategist as a liaison officer. 90-day posting to Ironhold. You'll advise both militaries on peacekeeping operations." Their words, not mine. Petrus leaned forward. "They want our best tactical mind as a hostage." "Not a hostage," Marcus corrected. "A guarantee. They know we won't restart the war with you inside their fortress." Isadora's mind was already working through the implications. Classic strategy. Remove the opposing commander from the board without firing a shot. Isolate the brain from the body and watch the organism die. But there was something else. Something in the phrasing that nagged at her. "Why me specifically? There are other strategists, other colonels." Marcus hesitated. That pause told her everything she needed to know. "The dispatch mentions an old treaty, something called the Blood Moon Compact. Apparently, if a human proves their worth in Ironhold, the wolves grant citizenship. Full integration." "Ancient history," Petrus muttered. "Fairy tales." "Maybe," Marcus said. "Some. But they're taking it seriously enough to offer terms, and we're desperate enough to consider them." Isadora stared at the map. At the blue pins that represented her mistakes. The red pins that represented their dead. 3 years. 12,000 men. And for what? A slower version of the same ending? I'll go, she said. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, arguments stacking on top of arguments. But Isadora was no longer listening. She was calculating. 90 days inside Ironhold meant 90 days of intelligence. Fortress layouts. Troop rotations. Supply lines. The wolves were offering her a master class in their own vulnerabilities. And all they wanted in return was the illusion of control. Marcus waited until the noise subsided. You're sure? No judgment in his voice. Just the question. I didn't survive 3 wars by playing it safe, she said. And if this buys our people the 6 months of peace, it's worth it. What she didn't say, what she would never say in front of the council, was that she was tired. Bone tired. Soul tired. The kind of tired that came from watching young men die for old men's pride. If this was a cage, at least it was a different cage than the one she'd been living in. Marcus nodded once. Military. I'll make the arrangements. Exchange happens at the DMZ, 3 days. Isadora turned back to her maps, to the careful architecture of her failures. Make it 2, she said. I've got packing to do. The neutral ground stretched between kingdoms like a scar. 50 yards of trampled earth, brown and barren, where nothing grew and nothing would grow for another generation. The land remembered violence. It always did. Isadora arrived with Marcus's battalion at her back. 200 men in dress uniform, more for show than function. The morning sun caught their brass buttons, turned them into small fires burning against dark wool. She wore her colonel's insignia, medals earned, not given. 3 campaign ribbons, a silver star for valor, a purple heart she'd never asked for and would trade back in a heartbeat if it meant her husband's name wasn't carved in marble. Across the divide, the wolves waited. They were not what Somir's propaganda had painted them. No slavering beasts. No monsters from children's nightmares. Just soldiers. Disciplined. Professional. Dangerous in the way that competence was always dangerous. Their formation was perfect. A cavalry wedge with 4 officers at the point. The center figure sat his horse like he'd been born to it. Tall, broad across the shoulders, with gray threading through dark hair. 48 if the intelligence reports were accurate. Commander Theron Blackwood. Alpha King. 3 major campaigns. 25 years of service. Widowed. Isadora had memorized his file the way some men memorize scripture. He dismounted when she approached. A gesture of respect between equals. The 4 officers behind him did the same, moving with synchronized precision that spoke to years of training together. Pack dynamics. She'd studied those too. Colonel Greystone, Theron said. His voice carried easily across the space between them. Deep, controlled, with the particular cadence of a man used to being heard. Your reputation precedes you. As does yours, Commander. She kept her tone neutral. Professional courtesy, nothing more. They stood 10 feet apart, close enough to read faces, far enough to react if things went wrong. Theron's eyes were amber. Not quite gold, not quite brown. The color of winter honey, and just as sharp. They swept over her once, cataloging, assessing. She did the same to him. Old habits. Know your enemy, know his strengths, know where he bleeds. I assume you've read my tactical analysis of your eastern flank? The question was not quite a challenge, more of a test. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Theron's face. Read it, he said, burned it, then memorized it. You're dangerously competent, Colonel. Flattery from the enemy, I'm honored. Not flattery, assessment. There's a difference. Behind Theron, one of the officers stepped forward. Older, maybe 50, with scars that ran from temple to jaw. The kind of scars that told stories men didn't share at dinner tables. Colonel Garrett, Theron said without turning, my second. Garrett's nod was economical. Ma'am. The other 2 officers remained silent. One was younger, early 40s, with the restless energy of an intelligence officer. The other looked like he'd been carved from granite and left out in the weather to cure. Combat specialist, Isadora guessed. The kind of man who spoke with his hands when words failed. The terms are simple, Theron continued. 90 days. You'll be quartered in Ironhold as a military liaison. You'll advise both our fort as on peacekeeping protocols, border management, conflict de-escalation. He paused. And you'll have the same rank and privileges as my senior officers. Isadora raised an eyebrow. You're giving me colonel rank in your command structure? You've earned it, Theron said. I don't hand out ranks for political theater. You'll have access to our war councils, our strategic planning, our training facilities. Everything except classified intelligence on our defensive capabilities. Which tells me you're confident I won't learn anything useful, Isadora said. Or you're confident it won't matter if I do. Theron's smile was brief, sharp. Let's call it mutual respect and leave it at that. Marcus moved up beside Isadora, close enough to whisper. You don't have to do this. Yes, she said quietly, I do. She stepped forward, extended her hand. Theron met her halfway. His grip was firm, warm, calloused from weapons training. The handshake lasted exactly 3 seconds. Professional. Appropriate. But something passed between them in those 3 seconds. A flicker. Like static electricity before a storm. Isadora felt it in her collarbone, just above her heart. A warmth that spread and vanished before she could name it. She released his hand, stepped back. Theron's expression had not changed, but his eyes held a question he did not ask. The exchange is complete, he said. Colonel Greystone is under Ironhold protection effective immediately. He turned to Marcus. Your sister will be treated with the honor due her rank. You have my word. Marcus's jaw tightened. The family resemblance was strongest there, in the stubborn set of bone that said arguments were coming whether you wanted them or not. See that she is, he said, because if she's not, treaty or no treaty, I'll come for her. Theron did not blink, did not bristle. I'd expect nothing less, he said. Take care of your men, Field Commander. They've earned the rest. It was a dismissal wrapped in courtesy. Marcus recognized it for what it was. He gave Isadora one last look. The kind of look that carried 3 years of battlefields and 5 years of grief and 45 years of being the older brother who couldn't fix everything. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, he said. That leaves me a lot of room, Isadora replied. Marcus almost smiled. Then he mounted up, signaled the battalion, and turned back toward Solmir. Isadora watched until the dust settled. Then she turned to face her new reality. Welcome to Ironhold, Colonel, Theron said. Let's see if you survive it. Ironhold was not a city, it was a statement. The fortress rose from the mountains like a natural formation, all black stone and sharp angles. No decoration, no flourish, just function distilled to its purest form. Walls thick enough to shrug off siege engines. Gates that could hold against battering rams. Towers positioned for overlapping fields of fire. Isadora cataloged it all as they rode through the outer gates. 30 years of military training did not shut off just because she'd crossed enemy lines. The interior was organized with the same brutal efficiency. Barracks arranged in perfect grids. Training yards where wolves sparred in both human and shifted forms. Armories that smelled of oil and steel. Everything had a place. Everything had a purpose. They don't believe in waste, Garrett said. He'd ridden beside her since the exchange, close enough to converse but far enough to give her space. Your quarters are in the officer's wing, East Tower. You'll have the same accommodations as the senior staff, meaning you'll be watching me, Isadora said. Garrett's expression did not change. Meaning you'll be safe, he corrected. There are factions in Ironhold that see this truce as weakness. The Alpha wants you alive and functional. So do I. It was not quite a threat, not quite a promise. Something in between. They dismounted in a courtyard where a dozen wolves were running formations. Isadora recognized the drill. Standard infantry tactics, adapted for enhanced speed and strength. The precision was impressive. No wasted movement. No hesitation. One of the younger wolves broke formation, approached Theron. Alpha, he said, the council is assembled. They're waiting in the war room. Theron nodded. He looked to Isadora. You've had a long ride. We can postpone the briefing until tomorrow if you need rest. Isadora met his eyes. I've had longer rides on less sleep, she said. If your council is waiting, let's not keep them. Something that might have been approval flickered across Theron's face. This way, then. The war room made Sumir's council chamber look like a child's playroom. Maps covered every wall. Not decorative maps, but working documents. Updated daily. Color-coded by threat level and strategic value. A large table dominated the center, ringed by chairs that had seen decades of use. 12 wolves waited, some standing, some seated, all of them watching as Isadora entered. Theron moved to the head of the table, and Garrett took position at his right hand. The message was clear. Pack hierarchy. Alpha, Beta, descending ranks of authority and trust. Gentlemen, Theron said. Colonel Isadora Greystone, Chief Military Strategist of Solmere. For the next 90 days, she holds the rank of colonel in our command structure and will advise on peacekeeping operations. The room remained silent. Not hostile exactly, but not welcoming either. These were men who'd spent 3 years fighting Solmere. Men who'd lost packmates to Isadora's strategies. Forgiveness was not something wolves offered easily. Colonel Theron continued, allow me to introduce my senior staff. He went around the table, the names and ranks. Isadora committed them to memory. Major Kane, the intelligence officer with restless eyes. Captain Rolfe, the granite-carved combat specialist. And at the far end of the table, General Darien. 60, maybe older. Silver hair cropped military short. Scars that told stories of campaigns, one before Isadora was born. And eyes that held absolutely no warmth. General, Theron said, your thoughts on the proposed border arrangements? Darien stood, moved to the maps with the confidence of a man who'd studied them for years. The current line is a mistake, he said. We've ceded territory that cost blood to take. The ceasefire leaves us vulnerable to incursions along the southern ridges. He glanced at Isadora. But perhaps our new advisor has insights we've overlooked. It was a challenge wrapped in courtesy, the kind of test Isadora had faced 100 times before. She moved to the map, studied the lines, the elevations, the natural choke points. The current border is indefensible, she said, for both sides. Your southern ridges have exposure issues. Our northern valleys are death traps in winter. Neither kingdom can effectively patrol these territories without overextending supply lines. Darien's eyes narrowed. And your solution? 2 options, Isadora said. Either establish a neutral DMZ with joint patrols from both militaries, or merge the border zones under a shared command structure. Anything else is tactical theater. The room went very quiet. A human, Darien said slowly, telling a strategy. How generous. I'm telling you mathematics, Isadora replied. Geography doesn't care about species, General. Neither does logistics. Theron leaned back in his chair, watching, assessing. The colonel makes a valid point, he said. Continue. Isadora traced the ridgeline with one finger. Joint patrols would require communication protocols, shared intelligence, and mutual trust that frankly doesn't exist yet. A merged command is cleaner but politically complicated. My recommendation would be a phased approach. Start with coordinated patrol schedules. Build trust through small cooperative operations. Reassess in 6 months. She looked up, met Darien's stare without flinching. Unless you prefer the current situation, where both our militaries bleed resources defending lines that benefit neither kingdom. Kane, the intelligence officer, spoke for the first time. She's right, he said. We've lost 40 men to border skirmishes since the ceasefire. Skirmishes that achieved nothing except body counts. Rolfe grunted agreement, rare from a man who seemed to communicate primarily through violence. Darien's jaw tightened. The Alpha will decide, he said. As always. All eyes turned to Theron. He regarded Isadora for a long moment, then nodded once. We'll implement a trial program. Coordinated patrols starting next week. Colonel Greystone will draft the operational protocols with input from Major Kane and Captain Rolfe. He looked at Darien. Your concerns are noted, General, but the mathematics speak for themselves. Dismissed, Garrett said. The room cleared quickly. Professional, efficient. Isadora remained at the map. She could feel Theron's eyes on her back. You made an enemy today, he said quietly. She turned, met his gaze. I've made worse enemies, she said. I'm still here. Theron's expression shifted, something that might have been respect. Battle of Wolfwood, he said. 3 years ago, You commanded the retreat that cost me 200 men. Tactical withdrawal, Isadora corrected. I saved 300 lives. Theron crossed to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell pine and leather and something else. Something wild that had no name in her vocabulary. I chased you for 6 miles, he said. Lost men in the valleys because I underestimated your planning. He paused. I respect competence, Colonel. Even when it cost me. Isadora felt that warmth again, faint, just above her heart, like sunlight through winter glass. She pushed it aside. If we're trading war stories, Commander, we'll be here all night. Theron smiled, brief, real. Another time then, he said. Garrett will show you to your quarters. Dinner is at sunset in the officers' mess. Attendance is expected. He moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. One more thing, Colonel. The mark on your collarbone. You felt it, haven't you? Isadora's breath caught. She had not realized it was visible, had not thought anyone would notice. I don't know what you mean, she said. Theron's eyes held hers. Yes, he said softly, you do. Then he was gone. Isadora stood alone in the war room, heart beating faster than it should, hand pressed against the spot where warmth had flickered and faded like a candle in the wind. The officers' quarters were Spartan. A bed, a desk, a window that overlooked the training yards. No luxury. No comfort beyond the essential. Isadora approved. She unpacked her kit with the efficiency of someone who'd lived out of bags for 2 decades. Uniforms hung in the closet. Personal effects arranged on the desk. A photograph of her husband, taken a week before deployment. Smiling. Young. Alive. She touched the frame once, gently. I'm sorry, she whispered to the empty room, for moving forward, for still being here when you're not. The photograph did not answer. It never did. A knock at the door pulled her back. Garrett stood in the hallway, expression neutral. The Alpha wanted me to give you this, he said. He handed her a leather-bound book, old, worn smooth by many hands. What is it? History, Garrett said. Might help you understand what you've walked into. Isadora took the book. The cover was unmarked. Should I be worried? Garrett's expression did not change. Only if you're smart, he said. Dinner in an hour. Don't be late. He left without waiting for a response. Isadora opened the book. The first page bore a title in old script, The Blood Moon Compact. She began to read. 3 hours later, she was still reading. The history was dense, written in formal language that belonged to another century. But the core facts were clear enough. 200 years ago, wolves and humans had not been enemies. They'd been allies. Certain human bloodlines, rare and specific, had possessed the ability to bond with wolf alphas. Not romantically. Tactically, a shared awareness on the battlefield. The ability to coordinate without words. To predict and counter enemy movements with supernatural precision. These humans were called Lost Moon Generals, and they'd been unstoppable. But power bred fear, and fear bred violence. The wolf packs had turned on the Lost Moon bloodlines, hunting them to extinction. Slaughtering entire families to prevent the bonds from forming. The last recorded Lost Moon general that had died in ritual combat, killed by the very Alpha she'd bonded with 200 years ago to the day. The Blood Moon Compact was a treaty written in the aftermath. A promise that any human who bore the mark could challenge for pack membership. Could prove their worth through trials of strength, strategy, and sacrifice. No one had attempted it in living memory. Isadora closed the book. Her hand moved unconsciously to her collarbone, to the spot that had been warm earlier. The spot where, if she looked in the mirror, she would see the faintest trace of silver beneath the skin. Impossible, she told herself. But her fingers found the mark anyway. And it pulsed once, faint as a distant heartbeat, warm as a promise she had not made. She stood, crossed to the mirror, unbuttoned the top of her uniform. The mark was there, silver, intricate, growing brighter as she watched. No, she breathed. The book had shown illustrations, ancient drawings of lost moon marks. They looked exactly like this. A knock at the door made her startle. Colonel, a voice called. Dinner, the Alpha is waiting. Isadora buttoned her uniform with shaking hands. The mark disappeared beneath fabric. Hidden, secret, but not gone. Never gone. She opened the door, followed the young officer through corridors lit by torches that cast shadows long enough to drown in, and tried very hard not to think about what it meant that an extinct bloodline had just woken up in her skin. The officer's mess was less formal than she'd expected. Long tables, benches instead of chairs, food served family style from platters passed hand to hand. Wolves of all ranks ate together, the only hierarchy visible in who sat closest to the head table. Theron occupied the center seat, Garrett to his right, the empty chair to his left, presumably meant for her. Isadora crossed the room under the weight of 24 stares. She kept her spine straight, her stride even. Let them look. Let them judge. She'd been judged before. "Colonel," Theron said as she approached, "you found us." "Your directions were adequate," Isadora replied. Something that might have been amusement touched Theron's eyes. He gestured to the empty chair. "Please." She sat. The conversation around them resumed, voices layering over each other in the particular cadence of soldiers at ease. Isadora caught fragments, border rotations, supply requisitions, a debate over the best way to sharpen a blade. Normal, human. If you ignored the eyes that reflected torchlight wrong and the strength in hands that could crush stone. Garrett passed her a platter of roasted meat. "Elk," he said, "hunted this morning." Isadora took a modest portion. The meat was good, simply prepared but well seasoned. Across the table, Rolf watched her with the intensity of a man waiting for a mistake. "You fought at Grey Ridge," he said, "not quite a question." "I did," Isadora confirmed. Rolf grunted. "Lost 3 packmates there." Isadora met his eyes. "I lost 70 men," she said. "War doesn't count the dead by species, Captain, only by waste." Rolf's expression shifted, a fractional softening. "You speak truth," he said, then returned to his meal. It was, Isadora realized, the closest thing to approval she'd get. Kane leaned forward from down the table. "I read your report on siege tactics," he said. "The one you published 5 years ago. Still required reading at the academy." Isadora raised an eyebrow. "You have a copy?" "3, Kane said. "1 for reference, 1 for lending, 1 to destroy if captured." That got a laugh from the surrounding wolves. Even Theron smiled. "I'm flattered," Isadora said, "though I hope you found it useful." "Saved my tail twice," Kane admitted. "Good theory, better practice." The conversation flowed from there. Tactics and training. Old battles dissected with the clinical precision of professionals who'd survived long enough to learn from their mistakes. Isadora found herself relaxing into the rhythm. These were soldiers. Her people, even if they wore different skins. Theron said little, but his attention never wandered. She felt it like pressure against her shoulders. Not hostile, just present, aware. After the meal, as wolves began to clear dishes and drift toward evening duties, Theron touched her elbow. "A word," he said quietly, "in private." Isadora followed him from the mess hall, down corridors that grew quieter as they moved deeper into the fortress. Torches burned low here. The shadows thickened. Theron stopped at a heavy oak door, unlocked it with a key from his belt. "My study," he said. "No one enters without permission." The room beyond was smaller than she'd expected. Shelves lined with books, a desk covered in maps, a window that overlooked the mountains, moonlight spilling silver across peaks that stretched toward stars. Theron closed the door. The sound was final. He moved to the window, stood with his back to her, silhouette sharp against the night. "You've read the book," he said. Isadora did not pretend ignorance. "I have." "Then you know what the mark means." She hesitated, then unbuttoned her collar. "Let him see." Theron turned. His eyes found the silver beneath her skin. Something crossed his face. Not surprise. Something deeper, older. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. Stopped close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "May I?" Isadora nodded, could not speak. Theron's fingers touched her collarbone. Gentle, barely contact. The mark flared. Silver light spilled between them, bright enough to paint shadows on the walls. Isadora gasped. Not from pain. From the sudden awareness that flooded her mind. She could feel him. Not his body, but his presence. His thoughts like distant thunder. his heartbeat syncing with hers. Theron pulled his hand back. The light faded. They stood in the aftermath, breathing hard. "Your lost moon," Theron said, voice rough, the bloodline that was supposed to be extinct. "I don't understand," Isadora managed. "I'm just human, no special ancestry, no magical lineage." "The mark doesn't lie," Theron said. "It recognizes alpha blood, and it's trying to bond us." "What does that mean?" "It means," Theron said carefully, "that in 28 days when the blood moon rises, we'll be bound, whether we want it or not." Isadora's mind raced through implications. The book said bonded pairs share tactical awareness, coordinate without speaking. "Yes," Theron said. "That's useful," Isadora said. "Strategically." Theron's laugh was bitter. "It's also a death sentence," he said. He moved to the desk, opened a drawer, pulled out another book, older than the first. "Read this," he said. "All of it, then we'll talk." "What is it?" "The truth," Theron said, "about what happens when Lost Moon bonds with wolves." He left without another word. Isadora stood alone in the study, the book heavy in her hands, the mark on her skin still warm from his touch. She opened to the first page. The title made her blood go cold. "The Curse of the Blood Moon." She read through the night. By dawn, she understood why Theron's eyes carried shadows that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. The curse was simple, brutal, inescapable. When Lost Moon bonded with a wolf alpha, they became perfect tactical partners. Shared awareness, coordinated movement, the ability to fight as one mind and two bodies. But the blood moon demanded balance. Under its light, bonded pairs were forced into ritual combat, a duel to the death. Winner absorbed the loser's tactical genius, gaining knowledge that would make them unstoppable. But the loser's consciousness remained, a ghost in the winner's mind, whispering, screaming, slowly driving them insane. Theron had bonded once before, 10 years ago. A wolf named Elena. The blood moon had forced them to fight. He'd won. She'd died in his arms. And for 3 years afterward, her voice in his head had nearly destroyed him. Only time and distance had dulled it to a whisper he could ignore. Until now. Until a mark had appeared on a human colonel's collarbone and started the countdown again. 28 days until the blood moon rose. 28 days until one of them would have to kill the other. Isadora closed the book, pressed her palms against the desk until her hands stopped shaking. Then she stood, straightened her uniform, pushed the fear down into the place where she kept all the things she couldn't afford to feel. She was a soldier. Soldiers did not run from impossible situations. They found a way through them. The training yard was already full when she arrived. Wolves running drills, hand-to-hand combat, weapons practice, the controlled violence of professionals honing their edges. Garrett stood near the sparring rings, watching two younger wolves circle each other. Isadora approached. "I need to learn your combat style," she said without preamble. Garrett turned, raised an eyebrow. "Planning to fight someone, Colonel?" "Planning to survive," Isadora corrected. Garrett studied her, then nodded slowly. "Rolf," he called. The granite-carved captain looked up from where he'd been drilling a squad through close-quarters tactics. "Sir?" "The Colonel needs a sparring partner." Rolf's expression shifted, interest, challenge. He crossed the yard, moving with the particular grace of someone who'd spent decades learning how to hurt people efficiently. "No shifting," Garrett said. "Human forms only, first blood or submission." Isadora removed her jacket, rolled her shoulders. "Ready when you are, Captain." Rolf smiled. It was not a kind expression. They began. Rolf was fast, stronger than any human had a right to be. He moved like water, flowing around her defenses, testing her reactions. Isadora fought smart, used distance, angles, kept him at range where strength mattered less than timing. 3 minutes in, she saw the pattern. Rolf favored his left side. Old injury, probably. Compensated well, but not perfectly. She feinted right. He committed. She reversed, drove her elbow into his ribs, spun behind him, and locked her arm around his throat. Rolf struggled, could have broken free with raw power. But the rule said submission. He tapped her arm, twice. Isadora released him. The yard had gone quiet. Wolves watched from every direction. Rolf turned, rubbed his throat. His expression was unreadable. Then he nodded once. Respect between fighters. You're fast, he said, for a human. You're predictable, Isadora replied, for a wolf. That got a bark of laughter from the watching soldiers. Rolf extended his hand. Isadora shook it. You'll do, he said, then louder to the yard. She's pack. The tension broke. Conversations resumed. Training continued. But something had shifted. Garrett moved to her side. That was risky, he said quietly. Isadora shrugged. Sometimes risk is the only currency worth spending. She felt eyes on her back, turned. Theron stood in the shadow of the barracks watching. Their gazes met across the distance. The mark on her collarbone pulsed, once warm. And for the first time since reading the curse, Isadora allowed herself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was a third option. One the books hadn't considered. One that didn't end in death. The training yard emptied as afternoon turned to evening. Wolves dispersed to duties, rotations, the 1,000 small rituals that kept a military fortress running. Isadora remained, reviewing what she'd learned. Rolf's movements, the pack's coordination patterns, the subtle hierarchies that governed interactions. Information was armor. She'd learned that young. Footsteps approached from behind, measured, deliberate. She knew who it was before turning. Theron stopped a respectful distance away, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to give her space. You fought well, he said. I fight to survive, Isadora replied. There's a difference. Theron's mouth quirked, almost a smile. Rolf said, you're pack now. That's high praise from him. I beat him, Isadora said. Respect is easier when it's earned in blood. True enough, Theron agreed. He paused. You read the second book. All of it, Isadora confirmed. And now I understand why you look at me like I'm a loaded weapon with a faulty trigger. Theron exhaled, a sound that carried weight. 28 days, he said quietly. Then the blood moon rises. The bond will be complete by then. There's no stopping it. You've bonded before, Isadora said. You survived. I killed her, Theron said flatly. My mate. The woman I loved. I put a blade through her heart because the curse demanded it. He looked away. And then I lived with her voice in my head for 3 years. Screaming, begging, until I wanted to die just to make it stop. Isadora's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be, Theron said. It was my choice to bond. My responsibility to end it. He met her eyes again. But I won't do it again, Colonel. I won't kill another woman I've come to respect. Then we find another way, Isadora said. There is no other way. The books are clear. One lives, one dies. That's the bargain. Books, Isadora said, are written by people. People make mistakes. Theron stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, hope, maybe. You think the curse can be broken? I think, Isadora said carefully, that every problem has a solution. We're both tactical minds. Let's treat this like a military objective. Analyze the variables. Find the weakness. Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. My study, he said, tonight. Bring the books. We'll start from the beginning. He turned to leave, stopped. Isadora. It was the first time he'd used her name. Yes? If we fail, he said quietly. If the blood moon comes and there's no other option, promise me you'll fight. Don't let me take you easily. She held his gaze. I promise, she said, but I don't plan to fail. Neither do I, Theron said. Then we're agreed. On that, yes. He left. Isadora watched him go, watched the way shadows clung to him like they recognized a kindred spirit. 28 days. 4 weeks to break a curse that had held for 200 years. Isadora had faced worse odds. Not often, but she'd faced them. She pressed her hand against the mark on her collarbone, felt it pulse warm beneath her palm. We'll figure this out, she promised, to herself, to Theron, to the ghost of a bloodline that refused to stay buried. The mark pulsed again, almost like it believed her. The sun set red over Ironhold's mountains. Blood-colored leads spilled across stone walls and training yards, and the distant forest where wolves ran under cover of gathering dark. Isadora stood at her window and watched the day die. 28 days, she thought again. 4 weeks, 672 hours. The numbers didn't change no matter how many times she counted them. But numbers had never scared her. It was what lived between them that made her hands shake. She steadied her breathing, checked her uniform, gathered the books. Time to find a solution. Time to prove that strategy and will could overcome prophecy and curse. Time to show the blood moon that not every story ended the way it was written. Outside her window, the first stars emerged. Cold and distant and utterly indifferent to the small dramas of wolves and humans and the bonds that tried to bridge the space between. But Isadora had never needed the stars' permission. She needed only her mind, her training, and the stubborn refusal to accept death as the only answer. She had 28 days. She would make them count. The war, she thought, is just beginning. And this time she intended to win. The council chamber held the particular silence that preceded violence. Not the chaos of battle, but the cold anticipation of judgment rendered and consequences delivered. Isadora stood in the center of that silence, spine straight, hands loose at her sides. Ready. General Darien occupied the Alpha's left, silver hair catching torchlight like frost on steel. His expression was carved from the same stone as iron holds walls. Hard. Unforgiving. Ancient. The human bears the lost moon mark, he said. Each word measured, formal. Ancient law is clear. She must complete the trials or leave our territory. Around the table, 12 faces watched. Some curious. Some hostile. All of them waiting to see how their Alpha would respond. Theron's voice came quiet, controlled. The trials haven't been invoked in living memory, General. They're archaic, designed for a different era. Law doesn't expire with convenience, Darien replied. She carries the mark. The trials are her right and our protection. Isadora had researched the trials after finding the first book. 3 tests progressively harder. Strength to prove physical capability. Strategy to prove tactical worth. Sacrifice, the nature of which remained classified even in the oldest texts. Most candidates died in the first trial. None had survived all 3 in 200 years. I accept, Isadora said. The words fell into silence like stones into still water, ripples of shock spreading outward. Theron turned to her. Something flickered behind his eyes, anger. Maybe, or fear, dressed in different clothing. Colonel, you don't understand what you're agreeing to. I understand perfectly, Isadora said. Ancient law gives me the right to prove my worth through combat. I'm invoking that right. The trials will kill you, Theron said flatly. Then I'll die having tried, Isadora replied. Better than living as a liability your counsel can leverage against you. The logic was sound. Darien's challenge wasn't about tradition. It was about control, about forcing Theron to choose between protecting his bonded mate and maintaining pack hierarchy. Political theater with lethal stakes. By accepting, Isadora removed the leverage. Garrett leaned forward. The human speaks bold, Alpha, but words are wind. Let her prove herself. Rolf grunted agreement from down the table. If she survives trial 1, I'll train her myself, the combat specialist said. If not, we've lost nothing but time. Kane, the intelligence officer, remained silent, but his eyes held calculation, running scenarios, measuring odds. Theron's jaw tightened, the only tell that he was anything other than perfectly controlled. Very well, he said finally. The trials will commence in 3 days. Colonel Greystone will be given access to our training facilities and any resources she requires. He looked directly at Darien. And when she succeeds, General, this council will accept her as pack without further question. If she succeeds, Darien corrected. His smile held no warmth. The blood moon is 25 days distant, Alpha. The trials must be completed before then, or the bond will finish forming without pack sanction. You know what that means. Theron did not respond, did not need to. Everyone in the room understood the implication. An unsanctioned bond would fracture pack loyalty. Give Darien and his faction grounds to challenge Theron's authority. Political coup wrapped in tradition and law. Dismissed, Theron said. The council filed out. Darien last, pausing at the threshold. Good fortune, Colonel, he said to Isadora. His tone suggested he hoped for precisely the opposite. When they were alone, Theron crossed to the window, stood with his back to her, shoulders tight with tension. You shouldn't have accepted. I didn't have a choice, Isadora said. There's always a choice. Not when the alternative is watching you lose everything because I'm here. She moved closer. This isn't about pride, Commander. It's tactics. Darien was going to force this confrontation eventually. Better on my terms than his. Theron turned. The distance between them was less than an arm's length, close enough that she could see the amber flecks in his eyes, the silver threading through his beard. You could die, he said quietly. I've been dying by degrees for 5 years, Isadora replied. At least this way it means something. The rawness in her voice surprised them both. Theron's expression softened, just slightly, just enough. Your husband, he said, the one in the photograph. Killed in action, Isadora confirmed, along with half his battalion. I planned that operation. My strategy. My responsibility. The silence stretched. Not uncomfortable. Something else. Understanding between people who'd both buried pieces of themselves in distant fields. We carry our dead, Theron said. Whether we want to or not. Some of us carry more than others. His hand lifted, almost touched her face, stopped. The mark on your collarbone pulsed once, warmth spreading like dawn light. 25 days, Theron said. If you survive the trials, the bond completes whether we want it to or not. And then one of us dies in ritual combat. Then we have 25 days to break a curse, Isadora said, and 3 days to make sure I live long enough to try. She held his gaze. Neither backing down, neither afraid. Help me prepare, she said. If I'm going into that arena, I want every advantage. Theron nodded slowly. Meet me in the south training yard at dawn, he said. We'll start with staying alive. The sky was still dark when Isadora arrived at the south yard. Stars scattered overhead like shrapnel frozen in mid-explosion. Cold bit through her uniform. She welcomed it. Cold meant clarity. Theron was already there. No armor. Just training clothes and 2 practice swords laid out on the weapon rack. Garrett stood nearby, arms crossed, expression neutral. Trial 1 is unarmed combat against a wolf in shifted form, Theron said without preamble. You'll face Captain Rolfe. Fight until a submission or unconsciousness. Death is not required but is permitted. Isadora had watched enough sparring matches to understand the odds. A shifted wolf had 400 pounds of muscle, claws that could shred steel, and reflexes honed over centuries of predatory evolution. She had training, experience, and a stubborn refusal to die easy. Not ideal odds, but she'd worked with worse. Show me what I'm facing, she said. Theron nodded to Garrett. The beta stepped back, gave them space. Then Theron shifted. The transformation was not dramatic. No explosion of light or sound. Just a ripple, like heat shimmer, and where the man had stood, a wolf remained. Massive, silver-gray fur with darker markings across the shoulders. Eyes the same amber as his human form. Intelligent. Aware. Dangerous in a way that made her hindbrain scream warnings about predators and prey and the gulf between them. The wolf circled her. Not aggressive. Assessing. She could almost see the tactical mind behind those eyes, cataloging her movements, her balance, her tells. He's testing you, Garrett called, looking for weaknesses. Isadora turned with the circle, kept her stance even, weight distributed, ready to move in any direction. The wolf lunged. Fast, impossibly fast. Isadora dropped, rolled, came up 3 feet away. The wolf was already turning, adjusting, pressing the attack. She backpedaled, used the weapon racks as obstacles, forced him to navigate terrain rather than rely on pure speed. 30 seconds in, she understood the problem. She could not win a straight fight, not against that much raw power and agility. She needed to change the parameters. Make it about something other than strength. The wolf feinted left, drove right. Isadora saw it coming, sidestepped, grabbed a fistful of fur as he passed, used his momentum to throw herself onto his back. For 3 seconds, she held on, legs locked around his ribs, hands tangled in thick fur. Then he bucked, twisted, and she was airborne. She hit the ground hard, tasted copper. The wolf stood over her. Could have finished it, didn't. Theron shifted back, extended a hand. You lasted longer than I expected, he said. Isadora took his hand. Let him pull her up. How long did your mate last? The question came out before she could stop it. Theron's expression went distant. 2 minutes, he said quietly. Elena was pack-born, trained from childhood. You matched her time with 3 days of preparation. That's not encouraging, Isadora said. Theron's mouth quirked, almost a smile. It's not meant to be. But you're thinking tactically. That's good. In a real fight, you'll have access to equipment. The arena isn't empty. Use everything. What did Elena use? Smoke bombs, Theron said, caltrops. A weighted net. She turned it into a trap exercise instead of a boxing match. And she still lost? She won, Theron corrected. Rolf submitted after 4 minutes. Then I'll aim for 5, Isadora said. They trained until the sun crested the mountains. Garrett called techniques from the sidelines. Explained wolf physiology. Weak points. Pressure points that worked even on shifted forms. By noon, Isadora could last 90 seconds on Theron's back before being thrown. By evening, she'd forced him to submit twice using chokeholds that cut off blood flow without requiring leverage she didn't have. Progress, incremental, hard-won. As the light failed, Theron shifted back one final time. Sweat sheened his skin. Breathing hard. Good. That meant she'd made him work. 2 more days, he said. We'll focus on endurance and environment usage. Rolf won't go easy on you. I don't want him to, Isadora replied. Easy doesn't prepare you for anything except more easy. Theron studied her. Something shifted in his expression. You really think you can win this? It wasn't a question. I think, Isadora said carefully, that winning is mandatory. Everything else is just details. Garrett approached, carrying the water skins. The human has spine, he said to Theron. I'll give her that. She has a name, Theron said mildly. Garrett's eyebrow rose. Then he turned to Isadora. Colonel, he said, my apologies. It was an olive branch, thin, fragile, but real. Isadora accepted the water, drank deep. Thank you, Garrett. The beta nodded once, then addressed Theron. Kane has intelligence from the southern border, requires immediate attention. Theron's expression shifted. Command mode. Have him meet me in my study, he said. Then to Isadora. Rest, eat. Tomorrow we train harder. He left without waiting for acknowledgement. Garrett lingered. He's worried about you, the beta said quietly. He's worried about the bond, Isadora corrected. Same thing, Garrett replied, to him. He followed Theron into the gathering dark. Isadora stood alone in the training yard, muscles screaming, ribs bruised, and the mark on her collarbone warm beneath her uniform. 2 days until trial 1. 25 days until the blood moon. The numbers counted down like a heartbeat. She pressed her hand against the mark, felt it pulse in response. We'll figure this out, she promised again. The mark pulsed twice, like agreement. Or maybe just wishful thinking. Hard to tell the difference some days. The second day of training brought rain. Cold, persistent, turning the yard to mud that sucked at boots and made footing treacherous. Perfect conditions for learning to fight dirty. Rolf joined them this time. The combat specialist moved through the rain like it didn't exist. All coiled muscle and patient violence. In the arena, conditions won't be controlled, he said. Could be rain. Could be snow. Could be blood making the stones slick. You adapt or you die. He shifted. The wolf that emerged was darker than Theron's. Scarred. One ear partially torn. A veteran of fights that went beyond sparring. Begin, Garrett called. Rolf came at her like a storm. Isadora used the mud. Slid under his initial rush. Came up behind him. Grabbed a training spear from the rack and used it as a lever. Wedged between his jaws when he turned to bite. The wood splintered. She rolled away, grabbed caltrops from her equipment belt, scattered them in a defensive perimeter. Rolf circled, testing, looking for openings. She threw smoke pellets. Thick gray clouds billowing across the yard. Obscuring vision, equalizing the sensory advantage. In the smoke, she moved. Silent, controlled. Used Rolf's own hunting instincts against him. Let him track where she'd been while she set traps where she was going. When he found her, it was because she wanted him to. She'd rigged a net between 2 posts, weighted, balanced. Rolf lunged through it. The net collapsed, Tangled his legs, he went down hard. Isadora was on him in a heartbeat. Dagger at his throat. Not real steel. Training blade. But the position was clear. Submit, she said quietly. Rolf shifted back, grinned. Clever, he said, using the environment as your weapon when you can't match strength. It's what I have, Isadora replied. Rolf stood, extended his hand. She took it. You'll survive trial 1, he said. Might even impress some of the hard cases on the council. High praise, Garrett observed from the sideline. Truth, Rolf corrected. The human fights smart. That's worth more than muscle most days. They ran the drill 6 more times. Different conditions. Different equipment. Teaching her to adapt on the fly. To read the terrain and turn disadvantage into opportunity. By evening, Isadora could force submission 4 times out of 10. Not perfect odds, but better than the 0 she'd started with. Theron watched the final run from the barracks entrance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When Rolf shifted back and declared the session complete, Theron approached. Walk with me, he said to Isadora. They moved through corridors lit by evening torches. The fortress settling into night routines. Patrols changing. Shifts rotating. The comfortable rhythm of military life. Theron led her to the archives. The room where she'd first discovered the Lost Moon history. Shelves heavy with books and scrolls and the accumulated weight of centuries. He lit candles. Their flames danced in the still air. There's something I need to tell you, he said, about Trial 3. The sacrifice trial, Isadora said. Theron nodded. Moved to a locked cabinet. Opened it with a key from his belt. Inside, a single scroll. Ancient. The edges crumbling. This is the only surviving record of Trial 3's true nature, he said. It's been kept secret for 200 years. He turned to face her. Trial 3 is ritual combat. Between the Alpha and the candidate, to the death. Isadora's breath stopped. When? Blood Moon Night, Theron said. If you complete Trials 1 and 2, the final test happens under the moon. When the bond is at its strongest. When the curse activates. Understanding crashed over her like cold water. Trial 3 isn't just a test, she said slowly. It's the death match. They built the curse into the trial system. Yes, Theron said. His voice carried exhaustion. Ancient weight. The trials were designed as a controlled way to satisfy the curse's demands. One death. Witnessed. Sanctioned by pack law. And if I refuse Trial 3 after passing the first 2, then the bond completes unsanctioned. The curse activates anyway. And we fight without rules, without control, until one of us dies in the wilderness like animals. No choice, Isadora said. The trap was perfect. Accept the trials and die in the arena. Refuse and die anyway, but cost Theron his authority in the process. Darien knew, she added. That's why he pushed for this. Theron's jaw tightened. He's positioned himself to take alpha status regardless of outcome. If you die in Trial 3, the pack sees me as a kingslayer. Unstable. Dangerous? If I die, he challenges for succession. Political chess, Isadora said, using our lives as pieces. They stood in the candlelight, the weight of it settling between them like a third presence. There's something else, Theron said quietly. His hand lifted. Touch the mark on her collarbone through her uniform. Gentle. Careful. The mark flared, silver light spilling between his fingers. The bond is forming faster than it should, he said. Another week and it'll be complete regardless of the moon. We're running out of time. Isadora felt it too. The growing awareness, the sense of his presence even when he wasn't near. His emotions bleeding into hers. Fear. Resignation. Something deeper that neither of them would name. Then we need to find the answer faster, she said. There has to be something in these archives. Some precedent. Some way the curse was broken before. I've been searching for 10 years, Theron said. Since Elena died, there's nothing. Then we're not looking in the right place, Isadora insisted, or we're asking the wrong questions. She moved to the shelves. Started pulling volumes. Ancient texts on wolf lore. Lost moon histories. Magical theory from eras before kingdoms had names. What are you doing? Research, Isadora said. I'm a strategist, Commander. This is what I do. Find patterns no one else sees. Exploit weaknesses no one else considers. The curse has been studied by scholars for centuries. Military scholars, Isadora said, looking at it through pack law and ritual combat. She turned to face him. But I'm not Pack. I'm Lost Moon. My bloodline created the bond. Maybe we also created the solution. Hope flickered across Theron's face. Dangerous, fragile. We have 1 day until trial 1, he said. 3 days until trial 2. 6 days until trial 3 if you survive that long. That's not enough time. Then we make it enough, Isadora replied. She pulled another book from the shelf, opened it, started reading. After a moment, Theron joined her. They worked through the night, candles burning low, shadows lengthening, 2 people racing against a curse that had devoured everyone who'd come before them. Outside, the moon rose, not blood red, not yet. But the countdown continued. Day 3 brought trial 1. The arena occupied Ironhold's central courtyard. Stone benches rising in tiers. Space in the center for combat. Ancient bloodstains dark against gray rock. How many had died here? How many more would before the stones finally crumbled? The pack filled the seats. Hundreds of wolves, some in human form, some shifted, all watching as Isadora entered through the western gate. She wore light armor, leather reinforced with steel plates at vital points, weapons belt carrying everything Rolf had taught her to use, smoke bombs, caltrops, a weighted net, a short blade for close work. Not enough to guarantee victory, but enough to give her a chance. Theron sat in the Alpha's box, Garrett at his right, Kane to his left. The Beta Squad, watching their commander watch a woman walk toward possible death because ancient law demanded it. Across the arena, Rolf entered through the eastern gate. He wore nothing, needed nothing, would shift and become a weapon that required no forging. Garrett stood, his voice carried across the stones. Trial 1, he announced. Strength. Colonel Isadora Greystone of Solmere faces Captain Rolf of Ironhold. Combat until submission or unconsciousness. Killing is permitted but not required. He paused. Begin. Rolf shifted. The wolf that emerged was the same one she trained against. Dark fur, scarred, patient. But this was no training exercise. This was survival. Isadora didn't wait for him to come to her. She moved first, grabbed smoke pellets and threw them hard. Dense gray clouds erupting across the arena floor. The crowd murmured, using tricks, not honorable. But honor didn't win fights against impossible odds. She moved through the smoke, silent, scattered caltrops in patterns she'd memorized. Created a maze of pain that would funnel Rolf exactly where she wanted him. His growl rumbled through the haze, close, too close. She dove left as he burst through the smoke, jaws snapping shut on empty air where her throat had been. Rolled, came up running, led him toward the weapon racks at the arena's edge. Rolf followed, confident, powerful, everything she wasn't. She grabbed a spear, planted the butt against stone, angled it up. Rolf saw the trap, pivoted mid-stride, but the caltrops found his paws. He yelped, stumbled. Isadora was moving before he recovered, net in her hands, thrown hard and true. It caught him mid-turn, tangled his legs. He went down. She was on him in a heartbeat, knee against his ribs, blade at his throat. Submit, she said, loud enough for the pack to hear, clear enough that there was no mistaking the victory. For 3 seconds, Rolf didn't move. Then he shifted, human form beneath the net, grinning. Submission, he called. Well fought, Colonel. The arena erupted, not in anger, in something closer to surprised respect. Isadora stood, extended a hand, helped Rolf to his feet. Thank you for the lesson, she said quietly. Rolf's grin widened. Thank you for learning it, he replied. Garrett's voice cut through the noise. Trial 1 complete. Victory to Colonel Greystone. Isadora looked up at the Alpha's box, found Theron's eyes. He wasn't smiling, but something in his expression had softened. Pride, relief, fear for what came next. She inclined her head, respect between soldiers. Then she left the arena to prepare for trial 2. 1 down, 2 to go. and the clock still counting down toward blood and moon and impossible choices. Trial 2 was different. No combat, no physical violence, just a war room, a map table, and an impossible scenario. Defend Ironhold against a 3-front assault with limited resources and mixed troops. The kind of problem that had no perfect answer, only degrees of acceptable loss. Isadora stood at the table, alone, the council watching from raised seats, judging every decision, every deployment, every sacrifice. Theron's voice came from the Alpha seat. You have 2,000 troops, mixed human and wolf units. Enemy forces number 8,000, divided across 3 attack vectors. Northern Pass, Eastern Valleys, Southern Ridge. You have 6 hours to prepare defenses. Begin. Isadora studied the map, the terrain, the choke points, the supply lines. 8,000 against 2,000. 4-to-1 odds. Suicidal by conventional thinking. But conventions assume symmetrical warfare, and this wasn't symmetrical. She moved her first units into position, not defensive positions, offensive. The council murmured. Garrett leaned forward. You're leaving the Northern Pass undermanned, he observed. Yes, Isadora confirmed, because the Northern Pass is a kill zone, narrow, steep walls, perfect for avalanche tactics. She moved engineer units to the heights above the pass. When the enemy commits forces there, we bury them, eliminate 1/3 of their strength without direct engagement. Darian's voice came sharp. And if they don't commit, if they recognize the trap, then they're forced to split forces between the Eastern Valleys and Southern Ridge, Isadora replied, which leads to option 2. She repositioned cavalry units. Fast response teams positioned to strike at supply lines. We don't hold territory. We make them burn resources defending what they've taken. Force them to garrison towns instead of pushing forward. Treat their logistics until they're fighting themselves as much as us. Kane spoke for the first time. You're sacrificing the outer settlements. I'm prioritizing the fortress, Isadora corrected. Every settlement we fortify is a force we can't use elsewhere. Better to evacuate civilians, destroy resources, and make the enemy carry the burden of occupation. The simulation ran. Enemy forces advanced, hit the Northern Pass, committed heavy infantry. Isadora triggered the avalanche protocol. 2,000 enemy soldiers buried in seconds. The Eastern Valleys became a running battle. Cavalry raids bleeding supply convoys, forcing the enemy to slow their advance to protect logistics. The Southern Ridge turned into a siege, but siege warfare favored defenders with interior supply lines. 6 simulated hours later, the enemy forces were stalled, overextended, hemorrhaging resources and morale. Isadora had held Ironhold with 30% casualties. The enemy had lost 50% of their effective combat strength. Garrett stood slowly. Acceptable, he said. The word hung like a benediction. Around the council chamber, heads nodded. Even Darian looked grudgingly impressed. Theron's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held something warmer. Trial 2 complete, he said. Victory to Colonel Greystone. Isadora stepped back from the table. Her hands were shaking. She hid it by clasping them behind her back. 2 trials down. 1 remaining. And only 4 days until the blood moon rose. That night, Theron found her in the archives again. Surrounded by books. Candles burning low. Exhaustion carved into every line of her body. You should rest, he said. Can't, Isadora replied without looking up. Too much to read. Not enough time. Theron pulled up a chair, sat across from her. You've passed 2 trials that killed dozens before you. That deserves celebration. Not more studying. Celebration comes after survival, Isadora said. She turned a page, squinted at ancient script. Right now, survival means finding an answer. Theron watched her for a long moment. What are you looking for? A loophole, Isadora said. Every system has weaknesses. Every curse has exceptions. I just need to find ours. And if there isn't one? Then I'll create one, Isadora replied. She finally looked up, met his eyes. I'm not ready to die, Theron. And I'm not ready to kill you. Which means there's a third option somewhere in this mess. I just have to be smart enough to find it. The mark on her collarbone pulsed, bright, insistent. Theron's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, pressed against the same spot. You feel it too, he said quietly. The bond. It's almost complete. I know, Isadora whispered. 3 days, Theron said. Then the blood moon, then trial 3, then one of us dies. Or neither of us does, Isadora insisted, because we find the answer first. Theron stood, crossed the space between them, knelt beside her chair so their eyes were level. I've searched these archives for 10 years, he said. Every book, every scroll, every fragment of Lost Moon history. There's nothing. Then maybe the answer isn't in the archives, Isadora said. Maybe it's in us. What do you mean? The curse demands one death, Isadora said. But what if we refuse? What if we both choose to lose instead of fight? That's not how it works, Theron said. The blood moon forces the combat. We won't be able to stop ourselves. People thought the Lost Moon bloodline was extinct too, Isadora countered. Thought it was impossible for the mark to reappear. But here I am, impossible made flesh. She leaned forward. If one impossible thing can happen, why not two? Hope flickered in Theron's eyes. Dangerous, beautiful. His hand lifted, cupped her face. You're either brilliant or insane, he said softly. Probably both, Isadora replied. He leaned closer. She didn't pull away. The kiss was gentle, careful, like they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. When they parted, the mark blazed silver between them. Light spilling across the ancient books like dawn breaking over a battlefield. 3 days, Theron whispered against her lips. 3 days, Isadora agreed. And then we rewrite the ending. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Isadora was in the training yard running drills with the Beta Squad when Kane appeared, moving fast, urgent. Alpha, he said to Theron. Border Patrol intercepted an intruder. Human, armed, claims to be Colonel Greystone's brother. The world stopped. Isadora's heart hammered against her ribs. Marcus. Where is he? Theron's voice carried command. Authority, the Alpha responding to a threat. Holding cells, Kane replied. Refused to speak to anyone but his sister. Isadora moved before Theron could object. Running toward the fortress, Garrett and Rolf falling in behind her. Protection detail without being asked. The holding cells were deep. Cold stone and iron bars and the particular smell of places designed to hold dangerous things. Marcus sat in the center cell, bruised, bloodied, but alive. He looked up when she entered. Their eyes met. Hello, little sister, he said. Isadora's hands wrapped around the bars, knuckles white. What are you doing here? Saving you, Marcus replied, like always. Theron entered behind her. The temperature in the corridor dropped 10 degrees. Alpha power filling the space like electricity before a storm. Field Commander, he said to Marcus. You violated the ceasefire. Entered our territory armed. Assaulted 2 border guards. Give me one reason not to execute you as a spy. Marcus stood, moved to the bars, ignored Theron completely, focused on Isadora. Sommer's War Council voted to restart hostilities, he said. 3 days from now. They think you've been compromised. Turn traitor. That's not true, Isadora said. I know, Marcus replied. But they don't. And they won't listen to anyone but you. He paused. I came to extract you. Get you home before the fighting starts. Home, Isadora repeated. The word felt foreign, like a language she'd once spoken but had forgotten. You don't belong here, Isa. Marcus used her childhood name. The one only family was allowed. These are wolves, predators. They'll use you and kill you and call it honor. The mark on her collarbone pulsed, warm, insistent. Marcus saw it. His expression changed, hardened. They've marked you, he said, voice dropping to something dangerous. You've bonded. It's complicated, Isadora said. It's a death sentence, Marcus snapped. I researched the Lost Moon bloodline after you left. Found the old texts. Figured out what that mark means. He looked at Theron for the first time. You're going to kill her. In 3 days. Under the blood moon. Ritual, combat. Trial 3, Theron confirmed. He didn't deny it, didn't soften it, just stated fact. Marcus's hands tightened on the bars. Then I'm taking her home. Now. No, Isadora said. Both men turned to stare at her. I'm not leaving, she continued. I passed 2 trials. I have 1 more. And Theron and I are working on breaking the curse. You can't break it, Marcus said. The curse has held for 2 centuries. You think you're special? Different. He shook his head. You're walking toward a slaughter. And I can't watch you die again. Again, Isadora said quietly. The word carried weight. Marcus looked away, jaw tight. When David died, he said finally, when your husband didn't come home, you died too. Just slower. He met her eyes. I can't lose you both. The truth hung between them, raw, painful. Isadora's throat tightened. You're not losing me, she said. I'm choosing this. Choosing to try. Choosing to believe there's a way through. And if you're wrong, Marcus asked. Then I die trying, Isadora said. But at least I'll die for something. Not just slowly fade away in a war room surrounded by maps of battles I'm too broken to fight anymore. Silence filled the corridor. Heavy, absolute. Theron spoke quietly. Your sister is stronger than you read it, Field Commander. She's survived trials that killed pack-born wolves. Earned respect from soldiers who fought 4 decades. He paused. And she's given me something I thought was dead. Hope. Marcus stared at the Alpha, reading him, measuring. You care about her, he said. Not an accusation, an observation. More than I should, Theron admitted. Then prove it, Marcus said. Find a way to break the curse, or step aside and let her come home. I'm trying, Theron replied. We both are. Marcus turned back to Isadora. If you stay, and this goes wrong, I'll burn this fortress to the ground. Brother's oath. If I stay, and this goes right, Isadora countered, you'll help us build a peace that lasts longer than our generation. Sister's oath. They stared at each other through the bars. Siblings who'd survived war and loss in the particular grief that came from being the last of a bloodline. Finally, Marcus nodded. 3 days, he said. If you're not home by then, I'm coming back with the entire Somir military. Fair enough, Isadora said. Theron addressed Cain. Release him. Escort to the border. He looked at Marcus. You have safe passage out. But if you return armed, we'll consider it an act of war. Understood, Marcus said. Cain unlocked the cell. Marcus stepped out, pulled Isadora into a fierce hug. Be smart, little sister, he whispered. Being brave isn't enough if you're dead. I know, Isadora replied. He released her, looked once more at Theron. 3 days, he repeated, then left with Cain. When they were alone, Theron turned to Isadora. He's right to worry, he said quietly. He usually is, Isadora replied. Doesn't mean I'm wrong to try. Theron's hand found hers, squeezed once. 2 days, he said. Then the blood moon. Then everything changes. Isadora squeezed back. Then we better make them count. They spent the next 48 hours in the archives. Reading, theorizing, arguing, searching for the crack in the curse's foundation. Garrett brought them food. Rolf checked in hourly. Cain provided intelligence on Solmir's military movements. The Beta Squad closing ranks around their Alpha and the human who'd somehow become Pack. On the final night, as the blood moon began to rise, Isadora found something. A fragment, ancient, half-burned, hidden in a scroll about lost moon bonding rituals. The curse demands death, it read. But death is choice, not destiny. When bonded pairs refuse to kill, the moon recognizes true strength. Not dominance, unity. She read it 3 times, then showed Theron. He stared at the words, hope and fear warring across his face. It's not much, he said. It's everything, Isadora replied. Don't you see? The curse was designed to prevent power imbalances. But what if we both choose to submit? What if we refuse to dominate? The blood moon forces combat, Theron said. We won't be able to stop ourselves. Then we fight, Isadora said. But we fight to not kill. We break the pattern everyone before us followed. She gripped his hands. We trust each other enough to lose. Theron pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. If this doesn't work, he whispered. It will, Isadora insisted, because the alternative is unacceptable. And I've built a career on making unacceptable odds work in my favor. The blood moon rose outside, red light spilling through the windows like a promise kept or a warning ignored. Tomorrow was trial 3. Tomorrow was the blood moon duel. Tomorrow they'd either break a 200-year curse or die trying. But tonight they held each other in the archives. 2 soldiers, 2 tacticians, 2 people who'd found something worth fighting for in the space between duty and desire. And for just a moment, that was enough. The war room at midnight held a different quality than during day. Shadows thicker, silence deeper. The weight of history pressing down like physical force. Isadora couldn't sleep. Her mind running scenarios, calculating odds, preparing her to fight where the objective wasn't victory, but mutual survival. She found Theron at the strategy table, alone, staring at maps he probably had memorized. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. He looked up, smiled faintly. Sleep feels like wasted time, he said, when dawn might be the last one we see. Isadora joined him at the table, their shoulders brushed, comfortable, familiar. Tell me about Elena, she said quietly. Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he began. She was fierce, he said. Strong. Everything a packmate should be. We bonded young. Thought we had decades. He traced a line on the map. Abstract. Meaningless. When the blood moon came, I thought we were ready. Thought our training would be enough. What happened? The curse overrode everything, Theron said. Every instinct, every feeling, turned us into animals with one objective: kill or be killed. He closed his eyes. I was faster, stronger. I won. And after, I lived with her voice in my head for 3 years. Screaming, begging, hating me for surviving. He opened his eyes, met Isadora's gaze. Well, says that has. It nearly destroyed me. Would have, except Garrett pulled me back. Made me remember I had a pack to lead. Responsibilities that didn't end just because I was broken. I'm sorry, Isadora said. Don't be, Theron replied. It taught me something important. That love without choice is just another form of slavery. He took her hand. And you've given me a choice I never thought I'd have again. Which is? The chance to refuse the curse. To choose unity over dominance. To prove that strength isn't about who survives. It's about who's willing to lose. The mark flared between them, bright, insistent. Trial 3 starts at moonrise tomorrow, Theron said. We have hours, maybe less. Then let's use them, Isadora replied. They spent the remaining darkness running scenarios, planning their approach to the duel. How to fight without killing. How to submit without dominating. It was insane, impossible, everything they'd been trained against. But it was also the only option that didn't end in grief. When dawn broke red and ominous, they were ready. As ready as 2 people could be to walk into an arena and rewrite 2 centuries of cursed history. Garrett found them in the war room. It's time, he said quietly. They rose together. Isadora in her trial armor, Theron in his formal regalia. 2 soldiers preparing for battle, 2 people preparing to trust each other with everything. The pack awaits, Garrett continued. Whatever happens today, know that you've both earned their respect. Not enough, Theron said, but it's a start. They followed Garrett through corridors filling with morning light. Wolves gathered in groups, silent, watching, the entire fortress holding its breath. The arena loomed ahead, stone and shadow and the accumulated weight of 200 years of blood moons. Isadora felt the curse waking, felt the compulsion building, the urge to fight, to dominate, to survive at any cost. She pushed it down, held on to the plan, held on to hope. Beside her, Theron's jaw was tight, fighting the same battle inside his own skull. Remember, she said quietly, we fight to lose. Together, you mom. There he agreed, all sen etum. They entered the arena. The blood moon waited. And the final trial began. The blood moon hung low and swollen, bleeding crimson light across iron-hulled stones. Ancient, patient, waiting for the sacrifice it had claimed every generation for 200 years. The arena filled quickly. Every wolf in the fortress, every soldier, Every Beta, Gamma, and Delta rank pressed shoulder to shoulder in the rising tiers. They came to witness what they'd always witnessed. Death sanctified by tradition. Power preserved through blood. Isadora stood at the western gate, feeling the curse wake in her bones like fever. The compulsion built with each breath. Fight. Dominate. Survive. The words beat against her skull in rhythm with her pulse. Across the arena, Theron emerged from the eastern entrance. No armor. Just combat leathers in the particular stillness that came before violence. His eyes found hers across 50 yards of stone. Amber meeting gray. Two people about to become statistics unless they were smart enough, strong enough, stubborn enough to break a pattern that had held for centuries. Garrett stood at the arena's edge, voice carrying to every corner, every witness. Trial 3, he announced. Sacrifice. Under the blood moon, the bonded pair faces the final test. Combat until death. No submission. No mercy. The victor claims alpha status and absorbs the defeated's knowledge. He paused. This is ancient law. This is pact justice. This is the price of power. The crowd murmured, anticipation thick as smoke. Garrett's eyes held something else. Sorrow, maybe, or resignation. Begin, he said. The curse exploded through Isadora like lightning. Every instinct screaming. Every training demanding. Move. Strike. Kill before being killed. She fought it, pushed it down, held on to the plan. Theron shifted. The transformation was instant. Brutal. The wolf that emerged was massive. Battle-scarred. Eyes burning with something that wasn't quite human anymore. The curse rode him hard. She could see it in the way he moved. Predatory. Lethal. Everything civilized stripped away until only the hunter remained. He circled. She turned with him. Hands empty. Weapons sheathed. Refusing to draw steel even as every nerve screamed for her to arm herself. The crowd grew restless. Why wasn't she moving? Why wasn't she defending? Theron lunged. Fast. Impossibly fast. Isadora sidestepped. Barely. Claws raked her shoulder. First blood. The scent hit the air and the wolves howled. Approval. Excitement. The ritual proceeding as it always had. She stumbled, went down, roll, come up fighting. The wolf was already turning, pressing, driven by something older than choice, older than will. Isadora drew her blade. Not to strike, to deflect. The short sword caught his next attack. Turned it aside. Bought her 3 seconds to recover. They circled again, predator and prey, except she refused to be prey. She threw the blade away. The clatter of steel on stone echoed. Gasps rippled through the watching pack. What was she doing? Disarming herself. Madness. The wolf hesitated, confusion breaking through the curse's compulsion. Why wasn't she fighting properly? Isadora spread her hands, empty, open, vulnerable. I won't kill you, she said, voice carrying, clear, certain. The wolf snarled, lunged again. She didn't dodge this time. Let him hit her. Let the impact drive her back. Let the pain come. But she didn't strike back. Blood ran hot down her side where claws had opened flesh. The mark on her collarbone blazed silver. Responding to her pain, to his violence, to the bond screaming between them. The wolf pulled back, circling, the tactical mind behind those amber eyes wrestling with instinct. She saw the moment he understood. Saw the moment Theron pushed through the curse's fog. His shift was slower this time. Deliberate, human form emerging, standing before her, blood on his hands, her blood. What are you doing? His voice rough, strained, fighting every second not to shift and finish it. Breaking the pattern, Isadora said. She touched her side. Came away red. We've been doing this wrong. All of us, for 200 years. The curse demands death, Theron managed. I can't stop it. Can't control it. You don't have to stop it, Isadora said. She stepped closer. The mark pulsed between them. Bright. Insistent. You just have to choose differently than everyone before you. I don't understand. The curse activates because we try to dominate, Isadora explained. Because we fight to win. But what if we both choose to lose? That's not how it works. Prove me wrong, Isadora said. She sank to her knees, unarmed, undefended. I submit. I choose you over victory. I choose trust over survival. The blood moon pulsed overhead, red light bleeding across the arena like judgment. Theron stared down at her, the curse screaming in his skull. End it, finish her, claim victory. But Isadora's eyes held no fear, just certainty. Just faith in a theory that no one had tested because everyone who came before had been too afraid to lose. Theron's hands trembled, claws extending, retracting, the wolf and the man at war inside the same skin. Then he fell to his knees. Facing her, equal height, equal vulnerability. I submit, he said, voice breaking. I choose you, I choose this. I choose unity over dominance. The mark exploded, silver light erupting from both their bodies. Blinding, absolute. The curse howling as something fundamental shifted in its architecture. Pain lanced through Isadora. Not physical, deeper. The bond completing in a way it never had before. Not through death, through choice. Through two people refusing to play by rules written in another age by people who'd forgotten what strength really meant. The light spread, touched the arena stones, the watching wolves, the blood moon itself. And somewhere in the brightness, Isadora heard a voice. Ancient, female, vast. Finally, the voice said, someone understands. The light dimmed slowly, revealing Theron and Isadora kneeling face to face. Both alive. Both bleeding. Both marked with silver that pulsed in perfect synchronization. The curse was gone. Not defeated, transformed. The bond remained. But now it was choice, not compulsion. Partnership, not dominance. Everything the Lost Moon bloodline had been designed for before fear had twisted it into something lethal. The arena stood in absolute silence. Then Garrett's voice broke it, rough with emotion. The curse is broken, he said. The blood moon bears witness. Two become one without death. Without dominance. He looked at Theron. At Isadora. Alpha and mate. Equals. The pack erupted. Not in disapproval. In something closer to awe. They'd witnessed the impossible. Watched ancient law rewritten by two people stubborn enough to trust each other with everything. Theron reached for Isadora, pulled her close. She collapsed against him, exhausted, bleeding, alive. We did it, she whispered. You did it, Theron corrected. You showed me how. We did it together, Isadora insisted. The mark settled into a steady silver glow. Permanent, beautiful. A reminder that some bonds were worth the risk. Darian's voice cut through the celebration, cold, furious. This is blasphemy, the general said. Ancient law violated. The Alpha has chosen sentiment over strength. He stood in the upper tier. Other wolves rising with him. A faction. Prepared. You've broken faith with the pack, Theron. And I challenge for succession. The arena went silent again. Different silence. Dangerous. Theron rose, pulled Isadora up with him, blood still flowing from their wounds but neither willing to show weakness. You want a challenge, Darian? Theron's voice carried. Alpha command rippling through every word. Then do it properly. In the ring. Under pack law. Not through political theater and manipulation. Darian smiled. Cold, predatory. I've been waiting years to hear you say that. Movement at the arena's edges. Darian's faction moving into position. Not just a challenge, a coup. But before it could escalate further, horns sounded. 3 sharp blasts from the fortress walls. The alarm Isadora had learned meant invasion. Kane burst through the arena entrance, running, urgent. Alpha, he shouted. Southern border. Mixed forces. Human and wolf. Estimate 5,000 strong. They're demanding surrender in the colonel's release. Marcus, Isadora breathed. Darian's smile widened. Convenient timing, he said. Almost as if someone arranged for external pressure during our moment of vulnerability. You, Isadora said, flat, certain, you told Marcus when the blood moon would rise. Gave him the timing. Darian inclined his head. Your brother thinks he's rescuing you, he said. I think he's providing the perfect chaos for regime change. When Theron falls defending against human invasion, I step into the void. Clean, legal, justified. Garrett moved to Theron's side, Rolf appearing on the other, Kane joining moments later, Beta Squad forming ranks. You'll have to go through us first, Garrett said quietly. I was counting on it, Darien replied. He signaled. His faction drew weapons. The arena exploded into violence. Not the ritual combat of trials. Real fighting pack against pack. Loyalty tested at sword point. Theron shifted, the massive wolf leaping into the fray. Garrett and Rolf flanking. Kane coordinating defensive positions with hand signals. Isadora drew her blade. Not the short sword from the trial. A combat blade from the fallen weapons of Darien's first casualties. She moved through the chaos. Not wolf fast, but smart. Tactical. Reading the flow of battle like a chessboard. Identifying weak points. Exploiting overextension. A wolf lunged at her back. She pivoted, let momentum carry him past. Drove her blade through his shoulder. Disabling, not killing. Every opponent a potential ally once Darien fell. The fighting surged toward the arena's edge, spilling into the courtyard. The southern gates. The invasion Marcus led providing perfect cover for internal chaos. Isadora fought her way toward the command post. Higher ground, better visibility. The tactics Theron had drilled into her during 3 days of preparation. She reached the parapet, looked out over Ironhold's southern approach. Marcus's army was impressive, organized, disciplined, exactly what she'd expect from her brother's command. Humans and wolves fighting together. The alliance Darien claimed to be protecting against. But something was wrong. The formations were defensive, not assault. Marcus wasn't attacking, he was posturing, waiting for something. For her. She grabbed a signal mirror or a flash code, military, Brotherhood cipher only field commanders knew. After 10 seconds, an answering flash came back. Stand down, she signaled. Internal situation, need 20 minutes. Marcus's response came quick. Negative, under attack from inside. Darien's wolves hitting our flanks. Understanding crashed through her. Darien wasn't just staging a coup. He was starting a war. Using Marcus's rescue attempt as justification, proving the human threat was real by creating it himself. She turned to Kane. The intelligence officer, had reached the parapet. Blood streaking his face, but eyes sharp. His uniform torn, exposing claw marks that had nearly killed him twice in the past hour. Darien planned this, she said. Used my brother as the spark. He's got wolves attacking Marcus's forces right now, making it look like we're defending when he's the aggressor. Kane swore, pulled out a distance viewer, scanned the battlefield with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent 20 years reading terrain and troop movements. Confirmed, he said. I recognize those unit markers. Darien's personal guard. They're dressed in standard garrison uniforms, but the formations are wrong. Too aggressive. Too coordinated. That's not garrison defense, that's assault doctrine. He handed her the viewer. Isadora scanned the southern approach. Saw what Kane had seen. 3 wolf units hitting Marcus's flanks, forcing him to commit reserves, drawing him deeper into engagement range. Classic provocation tactics. Make the enemy think they were winning while setting up the real trap. The eastern ridge, she said. That's where Darien's main force is positioned. He's using the flank attacks to draw Marcus into the killing zone. Once Somir commits cavalry to pursue the harassing units, Darien drops the hammer from elevation. Destroys Marcus's command structure. Leaves both armies leaderless and ripe for whoever seizes control first. Kane studied the ridge, cursed again. You're right. I count at least 200 wolves in those rocks. Camouflage positions, waiting for the signal. We need to stop this, Isadora said. Before both armies commit and the bloodbath becomes unavoidable. How long until Marcus realizes it's a trap? Minutes, Kane said. Maybe less. Your brother's good, but he's fighting blind. He doesn't know Ironhold's terrain. Doesn't know Darien's tactics. He'll commit because that's what field commanders do when their flanks are under pressure. Then we give him the intelligence he needs, Isadora said. She grabbed signal flags from the parapet stores, started flashing code, military cipher, the kind that couldn't be faked because only academy-trained officers knew the daily variations. The response came faster than expected. Marcus's signal corps was watching, ready. Trap on Eastern Ridge, Isadora signaled. 200 wolves. Elevated position. Flanking attacks are bait. Do not pursue. Hold defensive formation. 3 seconds of silence. Then Marcus's response. Confirmed. Shifting to defensive posture. Need proof of command authority. Smart brother, Isadora muttered, refusing to change tactics based on anonymous signals, even when they came from military cipher. She pulled her colonel's insignia from her uniform, the silver eagle that marked rank in service. Held it up to catch sunlight. Signal Corps would have optics. Would see it, would know. Marcus's response came immediately. Message received. Standing down offensive operations. Demand immediate parley. Your presence required. On my way, Isadora signaled back. How? Kane asked. The bond, Isadora said. She pressed her hand against the mark. Felt Theron's presence. Distant, but there. Connected. If the curse could be broken, maybe the bond could be used for more than just combat coordination. She closed her eyes, reached through the connection. Theron, she called. Not with voice, with thought, with the bond that now linked them deeper than blood. I need you. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then his presence flooded her awareness. Wolf senses overlaying her human perception. She could see through his eyes. Feel his heartbeat. Taste blood and smoke in the particular adrenaline of battle. What do you need? His thought came back clear. Immediate. End this, Isadora sent. Darian's forcing a war. Using my brother as the excuse. We need to stop it before both armies are too committed to pull back. How? Trust me, Isadora replied. Get to the southern gate. I'll meet you there. She opened her eyes. Kane was staring at her. You just spoke to him, the intelligence officer said, without words. Lost moon bond, Isadora confirmed. Turns out it's useful for more than predicting sword strikes. She ran. Down from the parapet. Through corridors filling with smoke and the sound of fighting. Wolves battled in every courtyard. Some loyal to Theron. Some following Darian. Some just confused and fighting because that's what wolves did when their pack fractured. She found Garrett coordinating a defensive line near the armory. The beta was bloodied but standing. Where's Theron? She demanded. Fighting his way to the southern gate, Garrett replied. Darian's trying to seal it. Trap us inside while the humans breach from outside. I need a squad, Isadora said. Fast movers. Wolves who can run message duty. Garrett hesitated only a second, then signaled. 5 young wolves detached from the line, moved to her side. You trust the human? One asked Garrett. I trust the Alpha's mate, Garrett corrected. And right now, she's our best chance to end this without losing everything. The wolves looked at each other, then nodded. What do you need, Colonel? The lead wolf asked. Message runs, Isadora said, to specific units on the battlefield. Tell them the truth about Darian's betrayal. Give them a choice before they commit to the wrong side. She rattled off unit designations, positions, the intelligence she'd absorbed during war councils, the tactical knowledge that made her dangerous. The wolves moved, fast, professional, carrying truth into chaos. Isadora continued toward the southern gate, fighting when necessary, avoiding when possible, conserving energy for what came next. She reached the gate as Theron did. He'd shifted back, human form, covered in blood, none of it his. Marcus is outside, she said. With 5,000 troops, Darian's wolves are attacking his flanks, making it look like we're the aggressors. I know, Theron said. Felt it through the bond. Your tactical awareness overlaying mine. He smiled grimly. Useful trick. We need to stop this, Isadora said. Open the gates. Let me talk to Marcus. Show both armies that we're united. Opening the gates during a coup is tactical suicide, Theron replied. Keeping them closed is political suicide, Isadora countered. Darian wins either way if we don't change the board. Theron stared at her. The bond hummed between them. Trust built through 3 trials. Through broken curses. Through choosing each other over every alternative. "Open the gates," he called to the garrison. The soldiers hesitated, looking to their commander for confirmation. Garrett appeared, bloodied but unbroken. "You heard the Alpha," he said. "Open them." The massive gates groaned, iron and oak swinging wide, revealing the battlefield beyond. Marcus stood at the head of his formation, sword drawn, army at his back, ready to charge. He saw Isadora, alive, standing beside the wolf Alpha, both marked with silver, both bleeding but standing together. His expression shifted through confusion, relief, rage, understanding in 3 seconds. "Stand down," Isadora called, her voice carrying across the killing ground. "It's not what you think." "You're bonded," Marcus shouted back. "The death match should have killed you." "It didn't," Isadora replied. "We broke the curse, found a different way." Marcus looked at Theron, reading him, measuring. "And now," he asked. "Now we deal with the real enemy," Theron said. "General Darien staged a coup. Used your rescue attempt as cover. His wolves are attacking your flanks right now, dressed as my garrison forces." Marcus turned, looked at his flanks, saw the truth of it. The formation's too aggressive, too committed, fighting with the particular viciousness of soldiers following orders that contradicted the main force's strategy. He signaled. His army shifted, defensive posture, holding ground but not advancing. "Prove it," Marcus said to Theron. "Show me Darien's betrayal." As if summoned, Darien appeared at the gate, surrounded by his faction, 50 wolves, all loyal, all armed. "How touching," Darien said. "The happy family reunion. But you've made a critical mistake, Theron. You've opened our gates during an invasion. That's treason, dereliction, grounds for immediate removal." "The human army was invited," Theron replied, "by you, to create the chaos you needed for your coup." "Prove it," Darien challenged. Kane stepped forward, held up dispatches, coded messages, intelligence gathered over weeks of watching and waiting. "Your personal guard," he said, "attacking Somir positions. Under your seal. Your command." He looked at the gathered wolves. The ones still loyal to Theron. The ones wavering. "You staged this war. Used both kingdoms as pawns." Darien's expression didn't change. No denial, no excuse. "So what if I did?" he said. Theron chose weakness. Bonded with a human. Broke ancient law to preserve sentiment. The pack needs strength, not poetry. "The pack needs vision, Garrett." Garrett countered. "Something you've never had." "Vision," Darien spat. "I've watched this pack decline for 20 years. Watched Theron mourn his dead mate and refuse to bond again. Watched us grow soft, weak." He gestured at Isadora. "And now he bonds with a human. Breaks the curse that's kept our bloodlines pure for centuries. This isn't progress. It's suicide." "Or evolution," Isadora said. All eyes turned to her. She stepped forward. Between Theron and Darien. Between armies and allegiances, and the weight of history pressing down on a single moment. "You call the curse purity," she said. "I call it fear. Fear of sharing power. Fear of trusting anything different. Fear that maybe your strength isn't enough without dominance to back it up." She looked at the gathered wolves, some loyal, some rebel, most just confused. "The Lost Moon bloodline was hunted to extinction because you were afraid," she continued. "Afraid of what we represented. Humans and wolves as equal. Partners. Not masters and servants. Not predator and prey. Just soldiers fighting side by side for something bigger than species." Darien laughed, cold, bitter. "Pretty speech, Colonel. But speeches don't change reality. Wolves are predators. Humans are prey. That's nature. That's truth. Nature adapts," Isadora said. "Truth evolves. And right now, you're the only thing standing between 2 kingdoms that could build something better than what came before." She turned to Marcus. "You came to rescue me," she said. "I appreciate it. But I don't need rescuing. I need an alliance. Solmir and Ironhold. Mixed forces. Shared command. The kind of peace that lasts because it's built on mutual respect, not mutual fear. Marcus stared at her, then at Theron, then at the battlefield where wolves and humans had stopped fighting, where both sides waited to see what came next. "You're asking me to trust wolves," he said, "after 3 years of war." "I'm asking you to trust me," Isadora replied. "And I'm asking you to see what I see. That Darian's the one who wants this war to continue. Who benefits from it? Who'll keep both our kingdoms bleeding until there's nothing left but his version of strength." Silence stretched, taut, fragile. Then Marcus sheathed his sword. "Stand down," he called to his army. "All forces, defensive positions only. No one engages unless attacked." The Solmir military shifted, professional, disciplined, holding ground but not pressing. Darian's expression darkened. "You're making a mistake," he said to Theron. "This human has compromised you, weakened you, made you choose her over your pack." "I chose unity over isolation," Theron corrected. "Chose partnership over dominance. Chose the kind of strength that doesn't require killing to prove itself." He stepped forward, alpha power rolling off him like heat. "You want to challenge," he said to Darian. "Then do it now. Here, in front of both armies. Let them see which of us deserves to lead." Darian smiled, drew his sword. "Finally," he said, "honesty." They met in the space between gates and army, between loyalty and rebellion, Theron in human form, Darian armed. The fight was brutal, efficient. Two veterans who trained together, fought together, knew each other's tactics. But Theron fought with something Darian didn't have. Connection. The bond feeding him tactical awareness beyond normal perception. Isadora's mind overlaying his own. Predicting. Coordinating. Two people fighting as one. 3 minutes in, Theron disarmed Darian, blade at his throat. "Yield," Theron said. Darian spat blood, glared. "I yield," he said, then quieter. "You've doomed us all." "No," Theron replied, "I've given us a chance." He stepped back. Let Darian stand. "You're exiled," Theron said. "Take your faction. Leave Ironhold. If you return, it's as enemies." Darian stared, then laughed, bitter, defeated. "You think this changes anything?" he asked. "The next Alpha will kill the human. The curse always returns." "Not this time," Isadora said. She moved to Theron's side. "Because we broke it, rewrote it, proved that partnership is stronger than dominance." Darian looked at them both, then at his faction, then at the battlefield where two armies watched and waited. "We'll see," he said, then turned and left, his wolves following, 50 soldiers disappearing into the mountains. The gates closed behind them. Silence held for 3 breaths. Then Garrett spoke. "All forces stand down," he called. "Cease fire, all positions." The fighting stopped, slowly, cautiously, wolves lowering weapons, soldiers checking for traps. But the violence ended. Marcus approached the gate, stopped 10 feet away. "So now what?" he asked. "Now we talk," Theron said. "About peace, about alliance, about building something that lasts." He extended his hand. Marcus looked at the blood on Theron's knuckles, at the silver mark visible even through torn leather. Then he took the offered hand. The grip lasted 3 seconds, professional, respectful. When they released, something had shifted. Not peace, not yet, but the possibility of it. The war room 3 weeks later held a different energy. Gone were the single kingdom maps, the isolated planning, the US versus them mentality that had defined 3 years of conflict and killed 12,000 men on both sides. Now the table held integrated force structures, joint patrol schedules, shared intelligence briefings, human and wolf officers working side by side, not seamlessly, not without tension. Arguments broke out daily over doctrine differences, cultural misunderstandings, the simple friction of combining forces that had spent years trying to kill each other. But working, actually working. Isadora stood beside Theron at the table's head. Not behind him, not in front, beside, equals, partners in command. She wore her Somir colonel's insignia on one shoulder, Ironhold's beta mark on the other. Dual loyalty made visible, symbol of what they were building. Marcus occupied the opposite end, field commander of Somir's forces. Still her brother. Still protective enough to send her worried glances when Theron got too close. But willing to try, willing to see past species to the soldiers underneath. Between them, Garrett, Kane, Rolfe. The Beta Squad expanded to include human officers. Major Petrus from Solmir's War Council, the same man who'd wanted to surrender 3 months ago. Captain Torres, cavalry specialist who'd lost half her squadron to wolf attacks and still showed up every year data-train joint operations. Lieutenant Morrison, signals officer working double shifts to teach wolves and humans each other's communication protocols. Others, 20 officers around a table that had once held only wolves. All of them learning to communicate across species lines. All of them building trust one mission at a time. The Border Patrol report is encouraging, Kane said. 6 joint missions completed. 0 incidents between partner forces. Soldiers on both sides are adapting faster than expected. We've had 3 situations that could have escalated but didn't. Partners backed each other, chose cohesion over suspicion. Because they have to, Marcus observed. The alternative is going back to war. Nobody wants that. Not after what we saw at the Blood Moon. Not after watching 2 people break a curse everyone thought was unbreakable. Some do, Rolfe said, his gravelly voice carrying the certainty of someone who'd spent 40 years reading wolves. Darian's faction is still out there, recruiting, building strength. We've had reports from the Northern Territories. Wolves disappearing from their packs, heading into the mountains. They'll return, better armed, better prepared. And they'll have a message that resonates with wolves who think Theron went soft. Then we'll be ready, Theron said. Together, his hand found Isadora's under the table. Squeezed once, the bond hummed between them. Connection that had saved them both. The word carried weight, promise, commitment, and something harder. The acknowledgement that what they'd built was fragile, that maintaining it would be harder than creating it. That every day would require the same choice they'd made in the arena. Unity over dominance. Partnership over power. Isadora studied the maps. The new borders drawn in green instead of red. The joint command structures represented by integrated unit markers. The supply lines running between kingdoms that had spent 3 years trying to starve each other out. It was imperfect. Fragile. Built on trust that hadn't been tested by real crisis yet. Built on hope that felt dangerous to invest in too deeply because hope had a way of getting people killed. But it was better than war. Better than watching young soldiers die for old grudges. Better than the alternative. We need to formalize this, she said. Not just verbal agreements and handshake deals. Actual treaty. Written. Signed. Witnessed. Something both kingdoms can point to when the hard cases start pushing back. Something that survives if one of us dies. If Darian succeeds. If this goes wrong, the alliance needs to be bigger than individuals. Agreed, Marcus said. I'll take it to Solmir's council next week. They're skeptical, but willing to listen. The economic benefits alone make this worth considering. 3 years of war costs. Rebuild costs. The fact that joint patrols cut our border defense requirements by 40%. The numbers support this, even if the emotions don't. And I'll present it to the pack, Theron added. Let them vote. Make it official. Give them ownership of this decision. They need to choose it, not just accept it, because their alpha ordered it. That's how this works long term. Consensus, not command. They'll vote yes, Garrett said. His scarred face carrying conviction built through 3 weeks of watching integrated patrols work. Most of them saw what happened at the Blood Moon. Saw the curse break. Saw 2 people choose each other over everything ancient law demanded. That changed minds. Made wolves question assumptions they'd held for generations. Some minds, Rolfe corrected. Others just got quieter. They're watching. Waiting to see if this lasts or falls apart the first time something goes wrong. The first time a human soldier makes a mistake that gets wolves killed. The first time a wolf loses control and hurts a human partner. This alliance is one crisis away from fracturing. We all know it. Then we make it last, Isadora said. Simple. Direct. The only option. We train harder. We communicate better. We build relationships strong enough to survive mistakes. Because mistakes will happen. People will die. Things will go wrong. The question is whether we let those moments destroy what we've built or use them to make it stronger. The meeting continued for another hour. Logistics, supply lines, training protocols, the 1,000 details that turn concepts into reality. When it ended, officers filed out, returning to duties, to the slow work of building peace. Marcus lingered, approached Isadora. "You look happy," he said, suspicious, like you forgot to be careful. "Maybe I did," Isadora admitted. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." Marcus studied her. The mark visible at her collar. The way she moved in sync with Theron, even when they weren't touching. The bond obvious to anyone who knew her. "He's good for you," Marcus said quietly. "Didn't think I'd ever say that about a wolf. But he is." "And you're good for him," Theron added. Appearing at Isadora's side. "You keep him honest. Keep him tactical. That's valuable." Marcus nodded, awkward, accepting. "Take care of my sister," he said to Theron. "I will," Theron replied. "Then I am." Marcus almost smiled, then left. Alone, Theron and Isadora moved to the window. The fortress spread below. Joint patrols visible on the walls. Mixed squads running drills. Humans and wolves learning each other's strengths. Covering each other's weaknesses. Progress, slow, real. "You know this isn't over," Theron said quietly. "Darien will return. Others will challenge. This alliance will be tested." "I know," Isadora replied, "but we'll handle it together." The mark pulsed, warm, steady, no longer a curse, just connection. The kind built through choice, not compulsion. Theron pulled her close. She leaned into him. Comfortable. Easy. The way people fit together when they'd chosen each other through every alternative. "No wedding," she said, firm, making sure he understood. Theron smiled against her hair. "No wedding," he agreed. "This isn't about romance. It's about partnership," Isadora finished. "Command structure," Theron added. "Military alliance first, everything else second." "Exactly," Isadora said. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their people learn to be one people. Not wolf, not human. Just soldiers serving something bigger than species. "Do you regret it?" Theron asked. "Staying, bonding, choosing this over going home?" Isadora considered, honest consideration, not reflexive answer. "No," she said finally. "This is home now. These are my people. All of them." And building this, she gestured at the window, the fortress, the alliance. "This matters. More than mourning. More than surviving. This is living." Theron kissed her temple, gentle, grateful. "Then let's keep living," he said. 6 months later, the treaty was signed. Formal, witnessed by both kingdoms, binding in law and tradition and the blood of everyone who died to make it necessary. The ceremony was simple, military, no pomp, no spectacle, just two leaders shaking hands while their officers witnessed, while historians recorded, while children who'd grown up during the war watched and tried to imagine a future without it. The document itself was 30 pages. Dense legal language covering everything from shared defense protocols to trade agreements to the mechanisms for resolving disputes without violence. Every clause negotiated, every word fought over, both sides compromising on things they'd sworn were non-negotiable because the alternative was returning to trenches and body counts. Isadora wore her colonel's insignia, polished until it gleamed. Theron his Alpha's regalia, the traditional wolf pelts and silver chains that marked rank and responsibility. Partners. Equals. Building a future neither had expected, but both were committed to creating with every decision, every compromise, every choice to try, rather than quit. The crowd cheered. Humans and wolves together. Not unified. Not yet. Too many scars. Too many fresh graves. Too much history that couldn't be erased by hope and good intentions. But learning. Watching their leaders and thinking maybe, just maybe, this could work. Maybe their children wouldn't have to carry the same hatred. Maybe peace was possible if you were willing to work for it. As evening fell and torches lit the courtyard in patterns that had been carefully planned to honor both kingdoms' traditions, Garrett approached, his beta insignia newly polished, his face showing the lines of a man who'd carried command responsibilities for 2 decades and wasn't done yet. "The pack has voted," he said to Theron. "They want to formalize the colonel's status. Full beta rank. Second in command. Equal authority with me. It's unprecedented, but then so is everything about this alliance. They respect what she did. The trials. Breaking the curse. Leading them through Darian's coup when everything could have fallen apart. They want it official." Theron looked at Isadora, question in his eyes, respect for her choice, understanding that this meant accepting full integration into pack structure, becoming not just his partner but theirs, responsible for wolves she'd spent 3 years fighting, trusted with their lives, bound by their laws. "I accept," she said. "If the pack accepts me, if they understand I'll serve both kingdoms, that my loyalty is to this alliance, not to one side over the other. I won't be a wolf who used to be human. I'll be a beta who serves the whole." "They already have," Garrett replied. "You earned it. Not through politics or favoritism. Through combat, through tactical brilliance, through standing in that arena and refusing to kill when every instinct demanded it. They respect strength. You've shown them a kind of strength they didn't know existed." "Not strength," Isadora corrected. "Partnership. It's different. It's harder. Requires more discipline than dominance. More courage than combat. The willingness to be vulnerable, to trust, to choose unity even when isolation feels safer." "Maybe," Garrett said, his expression softening. "But it works. That's what matters. It survives contact with reality. And in the end, that's the only test that counts." The induction ceremony happened at midnight, under a moon that was white, not red. Clean light spilling across the gathered pack like benediction, like the universe itself approving the choice to break old patterns and build new ones. Isadora knelt, not in submission, in tradition, accepting rank, accepting responsibility, accepting that leadership meant carrying the weight of every person who served under you. Every mistake, every loss, every hard decision that cost lives to save more lives. Theron spoke the old words, pack words in the ancient language that predated kingdoms, binding her to them not through blood but through choice, through proven worth, through trust earned in trials and battles, in the slow work of building something better than what came before. His voice carried across the silent courtyard, formal, ceremonial, but underneath she heard emotion, pride, relief, love that neither of them would speak aloud because this wasn't about romance. This was about duty, about service, about building something worth the cost. When she rose, silver marked both her collarbones. The lost moon symbol transformed, integrated, pack and human, wolf and partner. All of it woven together into something that belonged to no single tradition. Something new, something earned. The pack howled. Acceptance. Welcome. The sound rolling across Ironhold's stone walls and spilling into the night beyond, carrying to the mountains where Darian's exiles heard and knew that what they'd opposed had become permanent, that the alliance they'd tried to destroy had survived and strengthened, that the future would not be what they wanted but what everyone else had chosen. Isadora howled back, unpracticed, awkward, human vocal cords not designed for wolf song, but real, heartfelt, the sound of someone claiming belonging they'd fought for. Theron joined her, then Garrett, then Rolf and Kane and 100 other voices lifting to the clean white moon. Human and wolf, mixed, harmonizing imperfectly. Beautiful because it was real, because it represented choice, not compulsion, because every voice there had decided that unity mattered more than purity. Not a war cry, a song, the kind that spoke of unity built through effort, through choice, through refusing to accept that strength meant dominance, through proving that partnership could survive everything tradition said would destroy it. When silence fell, Theron took Isadora's hand. Welcome home, Beta, he said. Good to be home, Alpha, she replied. They stood together, partners, equals, leaders of something that had never existed before, something fragile and fierce and worth fighting for. Around them, the pack settled into night routines, joint patrols heading out, mixed units coordinating, humans and wolves learning each other's languages, building trust one shift at a time. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. The moon rose higher, white and clean and patient, watching over a fortress where old curses had broken, where new alliances took root, where two people had chosen each other and changed the world in doing so. Not through destiny, not through fate, through the stubborn, difficult, beautiful choice to try. Isadora pressed her hand against the mark, felt Theron's heartbeat through the bond. Steady, strong, connected. 3 years of war, 3 trials, 3 weeks of building peace. It had cost everything. It had been worth it. The wind carried sound from the distant mountains. Wolves howling. Wild. Free. Darian's exiles, maybe. Or just the world reminding them that danger never really ended. Just changed forms. We'll face it, Isadora said. Whatever comes next. Together, Theron agreed. They turned from the window, returned to the war room, to maps and plans and the endless work of maintaining what they'd built. But as they walked, their hands remained linked. Partners, equals. Soldiers who'd found something worth more than victory, something worth living for. The fortress settled into sleep around them, lights dimming, guards changing, the comfortable rhythm of a military installation at peace. For now, for tonight. And tomorrow they'd wake and do the work again, building, maintaining, defending. Because that's what soldiers did. They served something bigger than themselves. And if they were very lucky, very stubborn, very willing to break patterns that had held for centuries, they built something that lasted, something that mattered, something worth passing to the next generation. Isadora squeezed Theron's hand once. He squeezed back. No words needed. The bond carried everything. And together, together, they walked into tomorrow. Ready, unafraid, free,